Welcome to another episode of the Fort Wayne Local Podcast. I'm your host, Jake McAfee. Today, our special guest is Steve McDaniel. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we jump in, I just want to say thank you, everyone who's been listening so far. This has exceeded my expectations already. It's great. I'm going to keep trying to, bring value, bring you guys the city of Fort Wayne. To help me do that, if you can subscribe to the podcast, either Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, really wherever you guys consume your podcasts. Again, Fort Wayne Local Podcast, that'd be very helpful. Or our YouTube channel is McAfee Media. Not only are we doing the podcasts on there, we're also doing videos of different things around town, business owners, golf courses, parks, just anything that is Fort Wayne, we're trying to promote it on there. So subscribe, and thank you again for your support. So Steve is in his 29th year with the Parks Department. That's what we're going to be talking about today is, the amazing park system. It's a real gift to the city. We were talking off air. I was saying, I never appreciated it until having children and getting some perspective, but, it's really an incredible gift for the city. So I kind of wanted to highlight that. Steve graduated from Purdue University, correct?
Correct.
Saw that in your bio, so we know he's smart. Positions that you've held include project technician, manager of project administration, superintendent of the parks, deputy director of the parks. You're a volunteer board member for Blue Jacket Inc., which helps individuals with barriers get gainful employment. I'm sure that's an oversimplification, but it basically, you're helping people who need it take the next step forward in their life.
Correct.
And then you're also a board member with Indiana Trees, which works to inspire and educate Indiana's youth on being good stewards of our lands by planting, protecting, and maintaining their community trees with a hands-on learning approach. You mind touching base a little bit about what that is? That kind of intrigued me.
So I actually got involved with them through Leadership Fort Wayne. I had to do my internship, and I started with them 11 years ago, and I've been doing it since then. And so Trees Indiana gets kids involved with being outside in nature. They kept seeing that kids were going in and playing video games and stuff like that. And so it gets them outside. We plant trees. We do nature stuff. We have an outdoor classroom out on Cedar Canyon Elementary School outside beyond the school. And so it gets kids out into the nature to see that what trees provide our community.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So I did want to do an overview of, all the parks that are kind of under the city's, control, ownership, direction. So there's 87 parks, which is 2,840 acres, over 50,000 trees, 50,000 street trees, 20,000 park trees, 4 golf courses, 3 swimming pools, 60 tennis courts, 38 ball diamonds, 20 soccer fields, 58 playgrounds, 10 spray grounds. Is that water parks or the splash pads?
That's splash pads.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I figured. So I know that's not like the best listening content, me listing things, but I just wanted to give people, a big overview of the scope. This is a massive, a book of work that you're spearheading here. So what's your day-to-day role? What do you do day in and day out?
Do a lot of meetings. In the last couple of years, it's been a lot of virtual meetings like this, but it's basically trying to give it a high level view of goals that we as a department need to be looking at. Also trying to solve problems. So either problems with people, problems with facilities, problems in the community. I'll just say up front that I am just one person here at Parks and Recreation. It's a team that does this, and I work with a great group of people that lead what they do. They know what they're doing, and I'm here to make sure that we have the right resources that they have, that they can do their job. So for me, it's making sure that we've got a high level planning, that we're looking forward to the right things and looking in the right directions and addressing those things that our community needs.
Okay. And I actually don't know if I said your position. You're the head director of the Parks Department. Yeah. I don't think I said that at the intro. So And that's why we wanted to talk to you today. So why did you decide to get involved in the parks department? I'm guessing you're a person that had options. What drew your attention to parks?
Actually, I was a sophomore in college, and my TA in my structures class said, "Hey, you should take a position in the parks department as an intern." And I thought, man, I don't want to mow grass I'm going to school here. And she said, no, 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 it's a lot more than just mowing grass. So she gave me kind of an overview. I came in and interviewed, and my first 2 years I was an intern. And so for me, it was, and I needed a job. That's basically. But when I started doing what I did as a project technician, I took my schooling from Purdue and then was able to put together capital improvement projects, bid them out, and then manage those constructions. So whenever we did improvements, either building a new playground, renovating a pavilion, building new tennis courts, whatever that was, I was part of that team that did that. And as I built into what I was doing, I saw the value of providing to our community. And that's kind of what led me to stay with Parks and Recreation. I think people nowadays don't stay at their job for almost 3 decades. And I just love what I do. I love that we're able to provide opportunities for people to get outside of their norm. People have to deal with the day-to-day things with family, with their jobs. And when they come to the parks, they get to take that opportunity to add that quality of life to them, to their family. And so I love what I do. And that's kind of why I've stayed for all these years.
I can tell you are having an impact. I mean, it's, I grew up going to Shove Park. We'd walk over, when we were little, my parents would take us when we were old enough. We'd walk over and either golf or, fish or try to catch frogs or, now I'm taking my daughters we try to hit different parks just to mix it up. And the variety is incredible. The parks are always clean. Like the equipment is in good shape. If there ever something is broken, I notice it gets fixed right away. They don't leave the hazards hanging out there. So you guys are definitely doing a great job. What was your mindset when you took this role? Did you have a vision like, all right, if I accept this director position, I'm going to try to bring XYZ in? Or were you kind of like, let's get your feet wet and see what happens? Or take us through what you were thinking then?
Initially, I was really excited. I think the direction of our Parks and Recreation Department has always been going in the right direction. And so for me, I didn't want to screw things up. I want to make sure it keeps going in the right direction. But also, again, I am just one person. It is a team and a team effort. And I work with some really creative people. And so when things come up, it's making sure that, as I had mentioned before, they've got the resources to do what they need to do. But each individual, depending upon whatever they do in the job, they're looking for the best thing for their area. And so, again, it's just to keep it growing, keep providing what we provide, and make sure that we're not missing the mark with our citizens.
Okay. And what's the most difficult part of your job? I mean, I know once you're up at the top, then all the problems go to you. But what do you think is the most difficult part about this job?
Currently, I would say the resources, manpower, women power, whatever that is, getting the people into the positions. So we're like everyone else who's looking to hire people and just trying to get the people to apply and come in and fill the positions, so then we could provide either the programming or the facilities. There's always question about funding. I mean, if we had more money, we could do more. That's obvious. But so for me, that's kind of the hard parts right now. It's just trying to make sure that we've got the right funding going in the right direction, and then we can get the people to do the things that we need to do to provide, either teach the classes or make sure our facilities are clean and operational.
Okay, so I'm assuming that's a big part of your role too, is just making sure that you're fighting for the funds that you need. I would assume it's a little tougher where if it's stuff like, water, utilities or something like that, that at least generates income back in, where the parks maybe necessarily don't. Does that get overlooked because people maybe see it as an expense, so there's nobody fighting for it, even though it's not really an expense, it's an investment, but
Well, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, there is public safety, there was roads and things like that. You need to, I always think though that Parks and Recreation are just as essential, just for the fact that You need that quality of life to bring in the companies. I will share that we do generate some revenue. So with the classes, we do take some revenue in, but we also have some free classes. So there's a combination of things that we do. But for that quality of life, when a company is coming into town, and the mayor will even mention this, that when a company is coming into town, they know that they can get certain tax breaks and things like that, but they're looking for what does the community provide for their employees, for their staff, and to make sure. And for us, it's that Parks and Recreation, what we provide, the classes or facilities, that's helping generate. So for me, it's part of the whole grand scheme of things, that we're not just a frivolous thing at the end. We're an essential service like everyone else.
I'd completely agree. I mean, at the end of the day, what are we really trying to do here? It's like we work so that we can enjoy our lives. And, part of, at least for myself and my family, a big part of that enjoyment is the park system, getting out, fresh air, exercise, birds, bugs, snakes, my kids love that stuff. So that's great. What would you say is the most rewarding part about your job? I mean, you mentioned some of it earlier, but is there something that really stands out? Like, I love this about the job.
I think for me, the rewarding part is when you go out in the parks and you see people enjoying them. Maybe it's the first time that the kids are playing on that playground. If you just put a new playground in, it's that enjoyment that I see that our community is using our parks. We've got trail system. We've got a great trail system in Fort Wayne, and not just in the parks, but in the city and in the county. And so it's seeing those people out there using our facilities, enjoying them, and they're having fun. They're just out and enjoying their life.
Yeah, and I have a favor to ask the listeners. If you're on social media, tag the parks, like post pictures of yourself at the park. It ain't meant to be you if you're not comfortable being on camera. Post the, I don't know, equipment and ponds and rivers and stuff like that. I try to do that, just because I think it's like anything else. If you can get it out and have it seen, it's gonna, maybe encourage other people to do it. So if you go to the parks, I would like to, ask you to do that. So what's something that you're working on right now? Are there any projects in the works or anything new coming up?
So yeah, we're working on the first phase of Franke Park's master plan. So a couple of years ago, we did the master plan. COVID hit and kind of held it back for a little bit, but we're actually in the design phase for that first phase of Franke Park. So a new entrance off of Goshen Road, new pavilion, tying into some of the roadways in the park, but kind of that first phase of probably, I'm going to say 7 or 10 phases, depending upon how funding goes over the years. We're also still working on the second phase of Riverfront. So yeah. we built Promenade Park as phase 1. As we look at phase 2 and even phase 3, it's that public space that runs along the river. We're renovating that. So those are the two main capital projects. We've got a lot of other programming and things that we're working on. Mm-hmm. Kind of a new thing that we're looking at bringing to Fort Wayne Parks is esports. And I'm not sure if many people know what esports is, but it's sporting events using electronic devices. So Xbox, computer games, things like that. We see that that's a big growing sport. And for some people might say that, hey, esports aren't a sport, but they are. And a lot of people are watching esports, and we're seeing esports athletes are being paid just like professional athletes. Mm-hmm. And we also see the value that esports will touch some people that might not be playing basketball, might not be playing soccer or whatever it is. And so we think that that's a good thing to start for us. So if you're out there listening, that check us out, and we're going to be bringing some esports tournaments and some leagues coming in the near future.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and first of all, side note, that is a legitimate sport. I mean, like a legitimate being, like that thing is growing fast. And for, they do take criticism like, oh, that's not real. But then the same people will watch like two guys hit a ball or, shoot a basket. It's like, well, there's really not a huge difference. If you're watching someone compete, it doesn't matter. That's a side tangent. But so are you, I didn't know anything about this. So are you trying to get people, like if you're saying, all right, you're into esports, we can maybe get you outside into the parks and you can do this? Is that the thought process, or what?
Well,
how does
I think for us, we're just trying to provide a different opportunity. We saw when COVID hit, we had to close some of our facilities. And if we had had esports, then we could have continued doing some of those programmings. But I also think that there are people out there that tried sports as a kid, and either it worked for them or they didn't. And so there are some things that you can learn from esports that you learn from regular sports, so, teamwork, collaboration. And so for us, it's getting those people that maybe aren't playing the typical sports to try something new. One thing I just heard, I had a webinar the other day about esports. The average age of esport participants is not what you think it is. It's closer to the early 30s. So it's people of all ages are playing esports. It's not just your typical teenagers that you would think. So, but it's also, you could do esports for people that might have some challenges with either being immune compromised or something like that, where then that they don't want to get out and interact with a whole bunch of others. They can still play esports and do that from either their home or come into our facilities and get together as a group.
Yeah, or people maybe with extreme anxiety, or that's really interesting. I hadn't heard anything about this. That's really cool. Definitely something to keep an eye on. So I want to get to Riverfront and whatnot. Before that, I was wondering, if you're, let's say, if someone's listening to this, because I've talked to people who are moving here and they've listened to this podcast to try to get a feel for the city. What would you want them to know about our city's parks?
Parks are all different sizes. So some park systems in other cities they're all the same size parks across the city. We have a wide variety of parks, from small little pocket parks to neighborhood parks, all the way up to community parks and regional parks. So small parks to like a quarter of an acre to Franke Park, which is 340 acres. So it's all different varieties. And as you had mentioned at the kind of the beginning of listing out what we have in our parks, we've got such a wide range of things. You touched on a couple, but you didn't touch on some of the other ones. I was just going to hit those. So we have a skate park. So we've got campground, we've got dog parks, we've got a theater where we bring in concerts of all kinds of magnitude, local performances from either Philharmonic or children's choir, all the way up to we had REO Speedwagon in here this year. And so we've got all kinds of different things. We've got a conservatory. Solomon Farm is a 1930s era farm. So again, just our park system is such a wide ranging things from gardens to athletic fields to just nature and trail. So there is something for anybody in our community. So people coming in, check us out. There's something that will keep you active. We also do about 1,500 plus programs a year. And that might be either photography class, upholstery class, to arts and crafts, to athletics, to travel. So we have a travel program. COVID's hurting us a little bit on that, but typically we would do all kinds of travel where it might be day trips, it might be overnight trip, and it might be a week trip. So again, Fort Wayne Parks and Recreation has such a wide variety of things. So I don't want to hear anybody ever say, hey, there's nothing to do in Fort Wayne. There is so much stuff to do. And if it's not just with Fort Wayne Parks, the community in general has so much stuff to do. So I would say for anybody coming in, shame on you if you can't find something great to do in our community.
I'd agree. I actually say that in my posts a lot when I'm trying to promote the city. I say, if you think there's nothing to do, you're not trying. You're either unwilling to try new things or you're just burying your head in the sand, because there's, I even the stuff you mentioned, that was new to me, because I was going to ask, what's something that, people who live here may not know. And I feel like the concert series, the esports, all the things you just mentioned. There's so much stuff that people who've probably lived here their whole life didn't know that was even an option,
Yeah.
Okay. So, moving forward, what are some of what's your vision? Like, obviously any leader has to have a vision. What's your vision for the park system moving forward?
For me, it's keeping the creativity and the new things that we can always bring to our community keeping those moving forward. Um, and it's our team does a great job with coming up with some new ideas. The esports was one of them coming up with that. We're looking at modifying some of what we do. Adventure camp is something new that we're talking about doing. So we've got our typical summer camps, but we want to maybe explore some new opportunities. So my vision is just to keep us being creative and looking forward to new opportunities, new ideas. And then also building on the successes that we've done in the past. We've seen that with the opening up of Promenade Park, that kind of opened up a new idea and a new access for people to have access to our rivers, to our waterways. And I think that's something that we can build on in the future. So obviously we're seeing a lot more kayaking and canoeing on our rivers. I think that in the future, I'd like to bring that into some of our park, either the lakes at Frankie Park. We could do some boating and things like that. So it's building on what we've got, but then also adding it to some new ideas.
Okay, yeah, I'll tell you, I don't want to keep harping on the esports thing, but to me, just it kind of embodies a change that's really been happening here in Fort Wayne, where I feel like for many years there was a resistance to trying new things, and now I feel like new is being embraced. Just a parks department even thinking about esports to me is really awesome, because I think to me it makes me think like, what's next? What else are you guys going to continue to try and develop and listen to you're clearly listening to your citizens. Like you already knew that the average age, you're looking at demographics, you're looking at how can we enhance more people's lives, and that's just really exciting to me. I think that's kind of what I'm seeing a theme from you guys is like, how can we make people's lives better?
It's exactly, and I'll share with the team that, hey, if we try something and it fails, then we learn from it and we move forward. And if we need to modify it and try it again, we can do that. And so it's keeping that creativity open and trying new things, and they're not all going to work, and we know that. And so when it fails, we realize what that problem was, and we either look at something totally different or how we can modify it, or what did we miss in our mark. But don't be afraid to try something new and then learn from that.
Yeah, a phrase I love is you can't get stronger reading about push-ups. You kind of just have to do them, and I feel like it's the same thing. You just have to do things. You have to try, and then you adjust on the fly. So that's awesome. So that kind of ties into what we briefly touched on. I wanted to talk about Riverfront and then potentially Electric Works, but what's been the Parks Department's role in the Riverfront project? Like at least from phase one. Like how involved were you guys in that?
So we kind of led phase one. We knew that as a city that first part of Riverfront had to be something that was a public space. So we kind of took over and did the design, worked with the design team, and led that through the construction and building it. And for us, it was a great catalyst. We saw what Parkview Field did for the downtown 10, 12 years ago, and knew that we wanted to build on that going forward. And the citizens is what we listen to. So when we did a lot of public input as we looked at what that riverfront would be. And so listening to what they said, trying to put as much of that as we could into the plan helped us out. Now, as we moved into phase two, we kind of looked at it a little bit differently. As the park was done, we wanted to build on the successes that we had with that. But we wanted to also bring in that public or the private development. So it's the stuff that's happening next to Riverfront, next to the rivers. So we worked with our partners in community development. We as a city came together and pulled all of our departments together and said, hey, how do we work as a team to make sure that we've got the right people in place to look at what the impacts Riverfront will have on the rest of the downtown. And so as a group effort, we're working on phase two. We're looking at the public space, which is the area, either the River Greenway or the park land, will fall under parks. And so we'll maintain that. So we're part of the design team, but we also have community development who's looking at what this public space will be, that front door to other development. And so we want to make sure that it's all blending together And as our citizens, they're not seeing a big divide between one area and another. It flows together and it all flows well. And that's what I think a successful riverfront will be is it as you're walking through that, you'll flow from either the commercial side to somebody's office to go upstairs to somebody's apartment. It'll all flow together and you can have the public space, you can have the restaurants, the shops, and be close to the living quarters.
Okay. Yeah. And then you're trying to make it feel like you're not, okay, I'm in phase one now. Now I'm in phase two. You're saying just one continuous, awesome space for people to enjoy.
And at the end of it, I mean, it takes several years to build out the different phases. And our hope is as we get through this, it might be different areas. As we look to phase two into phase three is more passive, it's more recreational. And so I think you'll see the same flow will happen, but the area will be used a little bit differently. Phase two, I think, is going to be very much active space right next to the private development. And so as you walk through that, you shouldn't say, hey, I'm just now in a whole new area. It should all flow together.
I got you. And just for people listening, and correct me if I'm wrong. So phase one was Promenade. That was kind of the anchor to get this going. Phase two is going to be more private investment, like restaurants, retail, maybe some housing, stuff like that. And then phase three is going to be more recreational with like basketball courts. I think they even said sledding hills, like an amphitheater, like a grassy little amphitheater, stuff like, is that correct?
For the most part, but phase two does have public space in there. So there will be area right along the river that we will still have access, new areas to get down to the river. There'll be new piers that will be in the water, so you can either tie up your boat, more access points to the river. But there will also be activation spots. So in phase two, just to the east of Promenade Park will be an area that's going to be gathered. We kind of deemed it called the Shed. And it is an area that will be an active area that people will come, that they can do programming, they can sit and read a book and watch the river. But also in phase two, we're going to build on the success that we had in phase one with the tree canopy trail. So we're going to build an additional tree canopy trail so you can get out over the river, see through over to headwaters. You can see up to Martin Luther King Bridge, and then also to North River. We'll have a wetland trail that's down near the river. So there is a lot of active space, but that is also that front door to that private development that you had mentioned. So there will be opportunities along that corridor to have private development, either build a 3 or 4 story building that is either commercial on the first floor. I guess kind of what we're thinking is commercial on the first floor. It might be restaurants, it might be shops, it might be businesses of some sort, and then residential above. So mixed use development. And the idea is that we as a city aren't defining what those are, but we're just building that front door, that front patio for whatever does come in. And then our team here at the city is working great with a lot of different developers that are looking at some of those. They're seeing the success that Promenade brought. We have development that's happening right to the east of Promenade Park. It's a 6 or 7 story building that is going to have that mixed use. And I think we'll just see more of that building in the future.
Yeah, and something I want to point out, if you haven't been to Promenade yet, the tree canopy trail that he mentioned is really cool. It's like an elevated path that kind of overlooks the river. It has an awesome skyline view of downtown. Just a really cool, like I've taken photos there. I feel like it's a great spot to, post something for Instagram. I know that sounds ridiculous, but people like it. So
in the spring, we see a lot of prom pictures and things like that. So that's a new thing that we're seeing that in Promenade, that people are posting social media of we've caught wedding parties going through there to take photos too. So
yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome in the bridge there. Also something I like, just for people who haven't been, especially if you have kids, number one, you don't have any swings there at the park, which my 2-year-old will swing for like an hour straight, and drives my other daughters crazy. So what's nice is they're always moving, running around. But then since you can't park right next to the park, we walk a lot, so every time I take my kids there, we end up looping pretty much around the whole park, and they get a ton of exercise. It's, they're climbing on the bridge, they're going through the tree campy trail, they're going up and down by the river, in the seating area. It's a different park. Like every park is a little different, but I feel like this one is very, very different, and it almost encourages exercise, which is part of the reason we go there all the time. So I thought that was just something worth pointing out to anyone who's never been. Okay, so are you guys involved in electric works at all?
Very little. We've been working with the development team that is building out electric works. We have two parks that are adjacent to that property, McCulloch Park and Moody Park. And so our discussions with them is more of how do we blend in with what they're doing and how do they blend in with what we've got already in the park. So it's those kind of collaborations that we keep building upon as we do this, not just with electric works, with everyone else in our community. We deal with a lot of neighborhood associations and how they want to interact with the neighborhood parks. And so when we talk with the development team of Electric Works, that's how we've interacted with them. Inside Electric Works itself, there isn't going to be a park land. It's their development, and they've got great ideas of how people will flow from building to building and use that space really well.
So are you going to redo those two parks, Moody and McCulloch?
We've got some improvements planned for Moody Park. McCulloch, we've got, we just had and I just lost the name of it, but this summer, there was a lot of activity going on in the park with, I can't think of the name of it. It's the, I'm losing it here. So, but right. there is some plans for some improvements. We're kind of, as they filled out the rest of phase 2 of Electric Works, we'll have more idea of how that interaction will happen with McCulloch.
So still a little early in the process where it's like, all right, let's wait until you guys have a clearer vision on like what you're doing, what you're building, and then you'll try to like piggyback off that based on what they're building and the input of the surrounding neighborhoods.
Correct.
Are you correct? Okay.
And we talk with our neighborhood associations because we want to make sure, again, what we're doing in the park complements what they're going to be doing. And we also find that when neighborhoods have a vested interest in the park, they're keeping an eye on the park, and then it just keeps that park a little bit nicer because there's eyes on it, they're using it, and they're using it for what they want to use it for.
Okay. Well, I know this is like asking you to pick your favorite child, but I got to ask, what's your favorite park?
I was thinking that the same thing, that my favorite park, it is tough to pick. Mm-hmm. Over the years, I've been able to do a lot of improvements in a lot of different parks. And so each park has kind of a different memory or a different feeling for me. I live close to Krieger Park. And so to develop Krieger Park back in the 90s and then be able to see it bloom and blossom to having all the soccer fields and the ball diamonds, I'm able to walk my dog through the park on a pretty regular basis. So I kind of have a affinity for that one. But I also think that some of our other parks like Lakeside and Foster, they've got such great history. And so for me, it's tying back into those. But then there's some hidden gems out there. Little Turtle, which is just north of Lawton Park, has some history, has some knowledge, and for me, I can't really name one. There's so many of them that have some great things out there.
Yeah, I'd say for me, I'm definitely partial to Shove Park. I grew up there, as I mentioned earlier, and I don't know. I get good feeling every time I'm there. It's just so clean and there's so much to do and it's so big. I went to Dwenger, so that was my home baseball field. I mean, I spent a lot of time at Show, so I'm very partial to that. Promenade, for the reason I mentioned, I just like being downtown. So I take my girls and, we'll go, and once they're tired, we go eat somewhere. And I love getting them exercise. Is Indian Trails Park, is that under your guys' jurisdiction?
It is not. It is
Okay.
part of Boyd Trails
Okay.
or
I
Boyd
wasn't sure.
Parks.
All right. Well, I like that park still. So,
Well,
but
and that's the great thing of our community is, I think people should be able to try out all the different parks, in either if it's a township park, if it's a county park. I think I kind of ruined going to parks for my family, because when I ever go to somebody else's town, and I'm always looking at it in a different lens than everyone else, but it, getting out in the parks is again just part of what makes people feel a whole lot better, and also they have the opportunity to do that recreation and stop thinking about life in general, and be able to get away.
yep, absolutely. And the parks have a fantastic reputation. I mean, the city's known for it. My mother is a huge fan of yours, and if anyone badmouths the parks, she will fight you. So just know that. But all right. So, what's your favorite thing about living in Fort Wayne? It's how I like to wrap up every interview. What's your favorite thing about the city?
I think for me, I'm not originally from Fort Wayne, so I moved to Fort Wayne to go to school here, and then decided, hey, this is a great place to raise my family, and to live. So for me, it's that small town feel, but you still have a big enough community that there's so much stuff to do that you can always have something to do. But when you're out in the town, you recognize people, you see people, and so it's that big town but small feel. So to me, that's what makes Fort Wayne great.
I would agree. I love that. I just went to a Dwenger volleyball game with my daughter the other night, and I saw people I went to high school with that I haven't seen in forever. It's just you run into people, and definitely has a very connected feel. I'd agree with that. So, so how can people, if they want to get involved, if they want to connect with you, if they have questions or they have input about a park, that might be a good one. If they have a input that they want to add about a local park, how can they connect with you?
So to connect with me, my telephone is 260-427-6000. That's the Fort Wayne Parks and Recreations site. We have our website at fortwayneparks.org. A lot of information is on that. Everything from our fun times programming to just information about the parks, about our programs, and about the staff. People can connect with us at either Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Fort Wayne Parks. And then my email address is steve.mcdaniel@cityoffortwayne.org.
Well, you're a bold man, just putting it out there. So awesome. Well, Steve, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you're doing. I mean, this is almost like, in my eyes, it's like service work. I mean, you've dedicated yourself to making sure that other people have an enriched life. And I know that my family definitely appreciates it. And I know, my friends do as well. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on. And again, I just want to share that I'm just one person here. We have got a great team, and it's a team effort that's putting that out and making sure our parks, our facilities, and our programs are the top notch, and that we're providing what we think is a great product for our community.
A true selfless leader. We love it. All right. Thanks,
Thanks.
Steve.
Thanks, Jake.